best you use that system. Now the system that you're using doesn't have your camera on,
Let
and
me.
adjust to one, please, to avoid the feedback and the delay sound. Try there. Unmute your microphone.
Oh, this is good.
Um,
Are you hearing me now?
yes, 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 yes. You can deal with
And
this.
you're seeing me?
Yes, I'm seeing you. Yeah,
Okay, nice.
nice,
How's
quick.
everything? All is well with you? You're good?
I'm always good in the name of the Father. I depend on the Father to make me feel good every day. So once I wake up, I thank Him for feeling good and being here. It's a norm. It's a norm. I live by
Same here. Same here.
that. But you have a nice jacket on there, bro. Real
Yeah,
Dapper
yeah.
jacket,
I
man.
modify my color scheme.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That's great.
I did some wardrobe work.
Yes, nice, nice, nice. It's really nice. I like it.
The last week we were talking about some. Remember we were talking about theft, and I was saying that theft is larceny, or theft is dishonestly appropriating property belonging to someone else
Yes.
with the intention to permanently deprive. So
Mhm.
we explored a little bit at the end of our time
Yeah.
the issue of how do you determine when somebody takes up something in a grocery
Hmm.
and they get to the point where they're exiting the door, they get past the cashier with it, let us say, in a hidden place.
Yeah.
And we were discussing if it is you still have the window of opportunity to change your mind, meaning that if it is your intention was to steal,
Yeah.
if when you get to the exit point, you walk past the cashier and
Hmm.
you're exiting, you can still change your mind, or they can hold you with the item that you have on your person hidden
Yeah.
and charge you for larceny.
Yes.
So Richard and I were back and forth a bit. I being the defense attorney and me saying that you still have a window of opportunity to say, listen, I changed my mind,
Yeah.
or I forgot it was on my person. So therefore, um, having inadvertently or subconsciously walked away with this, I'm now declaring it.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's not theft. But Richard is saying that it is theft. That from the time you're and you had the intention in your mind, that is enough to um, to treat it as a theft.
Yes.
But we explored that. I wanted to raise one small issue because I know we're waiting until Richard comes. So
Hmm.
maybe we could pass some time, if I may put it that way, discussing another small issue. Have you ever been in an accident, David? Could be small collision, nothing out of this world.
Hmm.
And somebody, they roll up on you. Sometimes it's happened with
Time
traffic.
below.
Somebody roll up on your bumper because they're listening to music, they bend down to pick up the cell phone that fall off the seat that they're sitting on. People
Yeah.
like rest down the phone between the leg right there
Yes.
on the car
Yeah.
seat when they sit down to drive.
Yes.
So they find themselves gain a quick glimpse on the screen of the phone to see who calling them. They know if they ignore it or not. And in that blink, when you look down and you raise up your head in that traffic, you're rolling to the man in front of you.
Right. Right. Yeah.
At that point there, if it's too old car, the men get each other a bounce and say small thing. I mean,
Hmm.
no big damage here. My bumper was done old.
Yeah.
But yeah, want to roll in with a 323 Mazda that 25 years old onto a man high series Mercedes Benz. The slightest such he want that thing painted properly. So well, the point I'm getting at is there's this section of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act that speaks to
Hmm.
the need to, when it is there is an accident, the need to stop and render aid, and the collateral need to make a report at the police station. Very
Yeah.
often when we're in traffic and when we find ourselves in a little two vehicles kiss,
Hmm.
you all separate right there on the street and walk away and say, look, we forget that no small thing. We even bound, I ain't looking to settle on that.
Right.
But sometimes when you do that, you're taking the law into your own hands because the legislation, the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act specifically speaks under Section 79 one that you ought to stop and render aid if aid is necessary, meaning if somebody suffers an injury, if
Yeah.
somebody's person is affected,
Hmm.
and the person is affected, not that you physically bounce a man with your vehicle. You could roll up on a man in traffic and that sudden lash from behind caused him to a knee-jerk reaction, so to speak. He as we say in Trini language, he fly forward, he bounce his head on the steering wheel, or whiplash of some kind, and that's an injury. You may need to take that person to the hospital. You have to assess how affected is the man in front of you, apart from the vehicle that you roll up on. If
Yeah.
he's okay,
Mm-hmm.
it could be something simple. What if it's a pregnant woman? That little jerk reaction, that knee-jerk reaction, that bounce from behind when they're not expecting it, could cause some sort of, I don't know, some
Yeah.
sort of reaction. And their condition, a pregnant woman's condition, is so tender that they don't know what damage is caused.
Yeah.
But have you ever been in that situation where I have been there. So let me start by saying that I have been there where you roll up on somebody. Sometimes people roll up on me, and we just come out. I look at it, small issue, and we leave it there.
Yes, that has happened to me already too.
To engage that sort of action, or you never had nobody. Fortunately, nobody ever bounced you.
No, well, I've been into that a couple times. Well, not a couple, to say well twice, but it has happened to me already on several occasions because I'm always on the road, that kind of way. I'm always on the road.
Yeah.
And it has happened, and there were instances when I said, "Nah, small thing. But rightfully, you're supposed to report it to the police station. One time I had to do that because a woman who was where I live, the beaches are very close to me. There are about 3 beaches that are close to me. So there's one, the Carachet beach, where apparently she and her friends and family or whoever, they were having a time on the beach, and she was highly intoxicated. And she came, there was a supermarket, a Chinese supermarket that I was reversing out of the Chinese supermarket. And she just came straight across the road. It's a big junction, you're supposed to slow down and that kind of thing. And rubbed me on the bumper. And I was trying to negotiate. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "You've been drinking." You could see it in her face, right? I said,
Yeah.
"You've been drinking." I said, "When you're drinking, you're not supposed to be driving, I said, "No. Her car painted white. I'm dark gray, so the touch on the bumper left some white paint on the bumper. But I'm supposed to go do a body work soon, so I thought, well, no, forget that. You'll fix that just now, and maybe some compound might rub it off or something like that." And she was very, very, very rude and was giving me a lot of talk. So now I said, "Well, you can't be wrong and strong." I say, I could forget this because it's just a rub, she just left some of her paint on my car. There was no dent or anything like that. But I still went to the police station, the officer was telling me, "Oh gosh," when he looked at it, he said, I said, "Well, I am here to make a report." I said, "Don't want to make a report, but please give me something stating that I was here making this report. Because if I leave here and within the 24 hours, she comes and make a report and I didn't, I could be in a whole lot of trouble." So he
Right.
gave me a little note stating, well, yes, like a receipt like stating, well, yes, I made the report and thing. But she never went because I know she couldn't go because she was drunk. She was highly
Yeah.
intoxicated.
Yeah.
So all of those things happened to me. There were people who just roll up on me too, and I didn't make any big deal out of it because sometimes when you think about going to the police station and insurance, it's a big headache. So you wipe it off if there's no serious damage to your vehicle. Once it's serious, well, you will seek some kind of compensation. A guy had rubbed me down on my side about 2 weeks ago too. He was driving forward in a pickup. Apparently, he's doing contract work, carpentry, masonry, whatever. And he was on the phone. Now, I was taking a little boy to school, the little boy in the front seat, and I had people in the back seat. And in taking him to school, I am very vigilant when I'm on the road. So I saw him pull aside. He was on the phone, so he pulled aside. I don't know if he was arguing or negotiating or whatever he was doing. He was in a sort of active kind of conversation. So he pulled aside, and just as I was about to pass him, he decided to swing out to go back the opposite direction and rub me on the side of my car. It left a mark. So I was very serious about that. But then he said, "I can take it to my body, the guy who does my body work and thing and this and that and the other." I said, "What do you think this will cost?" I said, "I spent about $1,500 here just to erase the mark and all kind of thing." And he decided, "Well, I don't have $1,500 now. I have this, I have Nathaniel. So I told the partner, here, partner, I will be going to the police station and make a report. Organize yourself.
Yeah.
I went, but apparently he
Uh,
went too. So well, you end up working it out. But those things have happened to me on a couple of occasions. Some of which I allowed to just because sometimes it happens with women. They're on their phone in traffic, especially when they come to Port of Spain, bumper to bumper traffic. When I used to come to Port of Spain very early in the morning, when sometimes I did the afternoon drive and all of the morning drive and stuff, I'd be in traffic there and people drop asleep and roll up on me, bang, you know. And most of the time I see these people, the man come and say, oh God, I'm so sorry, but I drop asleep there, but I drop asleep. Any damage, you know. But it's just a
yeah.
bouncy. I call it bouncident. But
Yeah.
I let it pass. But really and truly, to be on the safe side, you're supposed to report it. And then from there,
I
whatever.
think what the public needs to understand,
Yeah.
if it is they are in breach of Section 79, subsection 1 of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act 4850. That is the legislation that governs how we ought to conduct ourselves as motorists on the road.
Yeah.
If it is we are found to be in breach of that Section 79, subsection 1, that is a criminal conviction.
Yeah.
And failure to report an accident and failure to stop and render aid after you involved in an accident could find you in breach of that particular provision of the law.
Yes.
If you're convicted, then you cannot get a certificate of good character.
No.
So, and that is a conviction that goes against your name. It's a traffic offense, but it's not a ticketable offense.
That's
You
right.
know, ticketable offense is if you're going in the market and you park bad, you park in a no parking zone. That's a ticketable offense. You pay a
Yeah.
fine, and that's the end of that. That doesn't register against your name.
But you're going to lose some demerit points also. But it doesn't go against
Right.
you, as you said.
Right. So, with certain sections of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act,
Yeah.
if it is you're held to be in breach and you're convicted before the court, it reflects that back in 1977, back in 1985, to the year 2000, 2022, whatever year it took place and that occurred,
Yeah.
you were convicted before the court, it stands against your good name.
That's right.
You will have to apply now thereafter for presidential pardon.
Yes. Yes.
And that is the only mechanism in this country for your name to be cleared. You will never be able to get a certificate of good character. So the public that is listening out there ought to be mindful that this is not failure to report is a criminal offense.
Yeah.
It's a minor offense, but criminal all the same. And
Yeah.
they ought to, when they're involved in accidents, out of an abundance of caution, as lawyers say,
Yeah.
out of an abundance of caution, it ain't hurting to go and make the report. Now, if it is, you know, you're going to drop your child off in kindergarten or your children off at secondary school or primary school, and you know, you're going to try to be late because it's done bumper to bumper traffic and you can't reach the school.
Yeah.
The law allows to make the report in a reasonable period, and the reasonable
24
period is 24 hours.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
So you could wait until the traffic clears up and explain to the police it happened 2.5 hours ago, but I was taking my children to school.
Yeah.
I didn't want to deprive them of their education. I dropped them in the school. I was on already closer to the school. So
Yeah.
I completed the exercise and I'm now in the station. The police will understand that.
Yes.
But let me give you, you know, sometimes a storyline helps. I had many of those experiences, David. But I will choose the one that I consider to be the more colorful ones to relate the story. When I was a young lawyer, I driving an old car, a 323, a Mazda 323. My father bought a car for me. He bought it from the neighbor for $11,000. So that alone can tell you how old the car is and the condition of the car.
Yeah.
The car, I could only say it was acid wash color, acid wash red. It's so much a flake on the vehicle.
Yeah.
So I driving, going down the road. I leaving home 6 o'clock and I living in the east. So 6 o'clock is a decent time to avoid traffic.
Yes.
When I get into Port of Spain, right by Broadway, where I had to straighten up and go down Independence Square. How we do it? Independence Square west. You're heading in a westerly direction. So you're turning off by Broadway and you just left, going by Royal Bank there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
to the promenade. Yeah.
right. It used to be in the old days. That was what that would have been it used to be north and south. And now after independence, they call it Independence Square North and Independence Square South.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Richard, how are you? You're good? We
Unmute your
gotta
mic.
take off. Yeah, yeah, unmute your mic.
Yeah.
Quite good, quite good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
We chatting before you joined us, but Richard and I was David and I were exchanging stories about accidents, small little fender benders that we would have been in at times, not necessarily our fault. But I was stating that under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, Section 48, well, Provision 79(1) of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, it speaks clearly that if you're involved in any accident on the road, any collision, vehicle to vehicle, or you bounce anybody in terms of you harm a person, you have to, and the law says that you shall report it to the police station. But before you report, you stop and render aid. So it's important not to breach that provision, because it's not a ticketable offense like you park bad and you get a parking ticket. It's a criminal conviction. It's what we may call a minor offense, but it's still a conviction all the same, Richard. And if it is you don't report and you're charged and convicted, you can't get a certificate of good character. So the public needs to be more mindful of the fact that, don't treat accidents lightly. It might be a little fender bender that you and the individual could say, like, we forget that it's small thing. I done driving an old car already, and your car was two old car touch. It's no big deal. Sometimes you could settle like that, but the law doesn't allow for those sort of quiet settlements, Regardless of the fact that you and the individual wants to settle, you're supposed to report the accident at the station. Let them make a log in the diary, the station diary, or whatever note the police wants to make. Let them issue a receipt that the accident was reported. And then they will make a note that the parties in examining the damage caused, party A accepted responsibility, culpability, liability, and he decided to pay, and they make an entry and they take his particulars, his driver's permit details, his insurance certificate information on both sides, and make sure that everything is, as they say, copacetic. But you can't take the law into your own hands and say, well, we settling that between ourselves, because something, when Richard walks away and David walks away from Richard, and then David calling Richard and he ain't taking the call, So Richard saved the number and realized, boy, this man calling me, he's serious, but he really want to fix that thing. And you ain't going, man, you ain't taking David call for days. So David now goes in the station 3 days after and say, officer, I've been calling on this man phone 3 days now. And he ain't taking my call, and he give me a slight bounce. We decide we gonna settle. The officer tell you, but you're supposed to report the accident. So what you're doing is you're admitting you commit a criminal offense. You come in the station to admit culpability. What the police to clean up your wrongdoing after you did wrong and you report the accident. You're coming now to bother the police to solve your problem when it is you and the man had all your own understanding. So the police might tell you, well, we don't really want to get involved. I mean, they ought not to say that, but I mean, they could say, why you want to involve us? No, at the 11th
At
hour,
that
3
stage.
days. Yeah. When
Why
they
you
very
want to
well
involve them at that stage?
Yeah. When you very well know, the correct thing to do was to come in the station, both only make the report and say to us, we settling. And they will make necessary notations. The police could cover themselves in terms of, they made a note of an accident reported and they took the particulars of both drivers, and the documents was okura and copacetic. And nice, everything cool. But I was about to relate something, so you catch me in time with my story. I had one of those incidents, Richard. I had to get into Port of Spain. A young lawyer driving the oldest car on the planet. My father buy a 27-year-old Mazda 323 for me. And I was telling David it was acid wash red, It don't have a consistent flow of red paint on the vehicle. It peeling every square inch of a peel. So when I got into Port of Spain by Broadway there, and I'm making the left turn by Royal Bank, a man coming from the Cathedral and in a straight, I well ahead of him, I turning, I already straighten up. The man bounced me from behind, jump out the vehicle, watch me and gave me a bounce and telling me, boy, me and the wife now get away there. I want to get out of the house. I'm sorry about that small thing. And he's smelling around. I say, Lord, I got in the station in St. Vincent Street by the library there. CID. I'm making the report. The police come out. They say, what's the situation? And
This
they
is today?
No. I'm just reflecting on an incident where, similar to, I'm conveying the storyline of having to report an accident. So I'm using this example, an old example of when I was a young lawyer and I driving an old car. So I had an experience. So when the man bounced me from behind, Richard, he come out and telling me small thing and giving an explanation that, he and the wife had an argument. He rushed out of the house. And he really sorry. He wanted to get out of the house, and he now happened to be passing by there and he touched me. But the man smelling around. I go on in the station to make the report because I'm mindful. 79(1) of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, I'm supposed to report the accident. I in a hurry, but I know to myself, there's a criminal conviction. If it is, I just let that flow there. And the police take this to a new level. You don't know how it may end up, where it may end up. It Independence Square North says, not to say it's on Calcutta Road in Freeport, it's some back road somewhere. So I go on in the station to make the report to cover my back. I'm more studying my good name than the old car. When I reach in the station, the guy came in the station. He come in the station, I telling the police, I said the man bounced me. It's a small bounce, but he drunk. This is pre DNA the days before they said that they're checking your alcohol content now. So it have no law as it speaks to DUI at that time. So I made the report, I presented my documents. He made his report, he gave his version, everything. He accept culpability, liability. He get the police a number and tell me he get fixed. The police say, all right, all is settling out, no problem. No entries in the diary, at least no visible entries. I ain't seen nobody write anything down, no notes written, nothing in the station. We make the report orally, we talk with the police. I telling the police, I say, listen, this man, I may not get through to him. I call in his cell phone, he may not answer. So said, so done. I call that man phone, David, and that man never answer his phone. I just accept the bounce and leave it at that. I didn't even bother to go back in the station and tell them, well, wait is gone. But here what the irony is, Richard. I sitting in the magistrate's court in Port of Spain, and a man come through and they read a charge of rape to him. And they ask him if he have a lawyer, and he said no. When it is, he answered to the charge, he no lawyer, they read the charge, they remand him in custody, no bail, because he had no lawyer, and they have to do a tracing on his background and so on. The magistrate now in a position where it's a minor, apparently was the victim in this situation. She asked him if he could afford a lawyer. He said he can't. She said, you want to apply for legal aid? So he said yes. She turns to me and says to me, Mr. Ali, would you be minded to accept the brief and represent the individual? Are you a member of the legal aid panel? So I said, yes, I am a member, and it's a courtesy of the court to ask you to represent someone or to accept a brief. You ought not to say no, unless it is you really have a reasonable excuse. And being a young lawyer, I didn't feel I could have offered an explanation as to why I didn't want it. I took the matter. Your volume, Richard. Your volume.
Don't tell me it's the same man who bounced your car,
Boy, when I take the brief now, remember, I'm sitting in the front of the bar table. I turn around to meet my client. I've just been appointed by the court to represent a man. When I turn around, I watch him and he watch me. And I watch him and he watch me, and I watch him and I say, my God. But I don't want to accuse the man of anything, because in my mind's eye, I'm saying, what if I'm wrong and it's not the same man? I want to give the benefit of the doubt, because he's not saying anything and both of us staring at each other. So I told him, I will come and see you. When I go on to see the man, I'm talking to the man normal about the case, and he watched me with a blank look on my face. He said, you don't remember me. So when he said that, that's when I confirmed in my mind's eye. The thoughts I was having that this could be the man, he just confirmed it. He said, that's the man who bounced 3 months ago. Boy. He bounced me 3 months ago, and he admitting to me now. I said, boy, it's a small world. He said, I'm really sorry about that. I said, well, boy, you have more things to be sorry about now. So, but the long and short of it is, Having said that, I mean, in as much as I represent him, he's still a client today. He's a faithful client. He's always breaking the law. So we have an ongoing relationship many years after, more than a decade after.
Well,
So,
I hope he pays you enough to clear off the bunks.
Richard, if I tell you something, I've been representing this man for free for more than 10 years.
Okay.
It seems like we develop a bond, and he expects that it's his free representation. He always calls me and say, I'm in trouble again. So, but the relationship started with a bounce. But I would say this, and I'm saying this to the public, Richard, under section 79(1), I want to read that part of the law so the public is aware of how serious this thing is. It says that where, owing to the presence of a vehicle on a road, an accident occurs whereby injury or damage is caused to any person, animal, or property, the driver of such vehicle shall immediately stop. And according to subsection A, this is what he has to do. If any person has been injured in the accident, the driver shall render such person aid. And if the person wishes to be taken to the hospital or to a doctor or is unconscious, the driver has to convey or cause to be conveyed the injured person without delay to the nearest hospital or doctor. So, Richard, the law under section 79(1)(a) clearly speaks to once there's injury to person or damage to property, or you could bounce a dog, you damage a dog. You can't say, well, it's a stray dog and leave it there. You're supposed to stop and render aid to the stray dog. You're supposed to look after the interest of the animal. You're supposed to, better yet, you cause injury to a person. If you bounce a dustbin in the road and it's somebody's property, you ought to come out, stop, ascertain who's the owner, have a discussion about what happened, the damage that was caused, and see if they want to take it further. And the law says you shall. So apart from stopping, it's important to stop. You know, some people don't stop; they keep driving and say, "Boy, if I stop, there's problems because I know my driver's permit is valid, or it's valid and the insurance not valid." And you know, they have all the reasons in the world why they don't want to do the correct thing. So they stop. Failure to stop is also a contravention of 79(1)(a), as well as you may stop, and then when you realize you cause injury to person, property, or animal, you drive off. So you're committing there's an added component, a collateral component to stopping that you ought to render aid. And if you don't render aid, you're breaking the law. If you're charged and convicted, you can't get a certificate of good character. So, not being able to get a certificate of good character, I don't think the public needs to understand what that means, because it means they say you can't get a job. Anyway, you're going to work now. We have gotten to the stage in this country where everybody's asking for that. They want to know the character of the man who stands before them. So, David, failure to stop, failure to render aid is important. It's always important, Richard, to stop and render aid. And the public needs to bear in mind, it doesn't only apply to persons, but it applies to property, and even if you bounce an animal. Another thing with rendering aid means if it is the person you bounce, let us say you bounce an individual, not necessarily bouncing them down, you know, like we say in Trini language, you knock down a civilian. If you bounce a man off his bicycle, you hit a vehicle, as we were saying earlier, David. If the person feels that they need some sort of medical care and they ask you to take them to the hospital, you have a responsibility to do same. Or if you can't do it, then you cause it to be done. So you may have to call somebody, whether they're a relative or somebody that another civilian who may stop an interested party who got involved, and see if it is you could put all things in place to get the individual who has been injured as a result of your actions to the hospital. And Richard 79(1)(b), it says that if requested by the injured person or by the owner of the damaged property or some person on such owner's behalf, the driver shall give his name and address and particulars of his driving permit and name and address of the owner of the vehicle. So you ought to produce your documents to the individual on the road right there. Once Richard has bongs David, and David say, I want to see your documents. You can't say that is my private documents and I don't need to show you that. The law under section 79(1)(b) says that you ought to share with the other driver your particulars. That people say, well, I don't want to show you my driver, so that is my permit. Or I don't need to show you my insurance, proof of my insurance, the vehicle being insured. You ought to do that. 79(1)(b) says that you ought to share your details, your name, your address, particulars of your driving permit, name and address and owner of the vehicle, your certified copy. So let us say you're driving a vehicle that you're not, the certified copy is not in your name. Maybe you didn't do the correct thing and transfer it, or perhaps it's an innocent thing, you're driving your wife's vehicle. You may not want the person you're bound to know your wife's name or your other your partner's name or your friend's name. You still have to share it, because by law, the name of the person on the certified copy of the vehicle that caused the injury or that is involved in the accident, whether he caused it or he didn't cause it, it was involved. That particulars that is on the certified copy ought to be shared, and your DP details ought to be shared. So you may discover that the man who bounced you have an expired driver's permit. It's good to find that out, because you know something, you might be in more trouble than you think in the context of, you know, if it is, well, I'm sure you would know. Once the DP is expired, it automatically treats the insurance as not valid. So if you're driving and your permit expired 24 hours ago, you may have a valid certificate of insurance, but the insurance company now may say, well, you know, this man driving the vehicle with an expired permit. In law, the insurance isn't valid because the man who's driving wasn't licensed for the road. So you ought not to be conducting the vehicle and conveying the vehicle on the nation's roads in the first place. But that's an issue, that's another kind of issue. But what I'm saying to the public who's listening out there, ensure that your permit is valid, because your insurance may not be valid if your permit is not valid. And if it is, you're driving with a permit that is not valid under 79(1)(b), you could be in some difficulty. 79(1)(c), Richard. Unless a report is made by the driver at the time and place of the accident to a member of the police service, the person riding in, driving or in charge of the vehicle shall proceed with all proper dispatch to the nearest police station or police constable in uniform and shall report the accident, and shall give his name and address, and the name and address of the owner of the vehicle and the name of any persons in the vehicle at the time of the accident. And they say under 79(2), any person who contravenes this section is guilty of an offense. So in other words, you have an obligation in law. You shall report. And if you don't report, you commit a criminal offense. But let us take the conversation in a different direction. Born out of the same fact.
Yeah.
When you go to the station, Richard, and David, you can jump in here too. Eh?
Yeah.
When you go to the station and the police ask you, in what way can we help you, if they put it in such cultured language? And you say, well, officer, I'm here to report an accident. They tell you, well, sit across there. Where's the other party? And two of you all sit there. And then they say, let us see your documents. And they bring out the little, they bring out these long sheets of paper. And the 8.5 by 14 long sheets, and they ask you all kind of particulars, and they take it and they start writing, and they say they want to see your permit and your insurance. So let us say your permit and insurance in order, both sides. Then I ask you, Richard, could you tell us what happened? Share with us what happened. What happened? How you all came to be in an accident? Have you ever been in that position where you have to go and explain? You make the report and you have to know.
Yes.
Right.
A couple of times.
So after you make the report, Richard, do you go on to explain to the police now exactly what took place?
Yes, sometimes they wanted to draw it too. And sometimes the officers will come out and look at the vehicle, look at the extent, because what you tell them, the accident itself must be consistent with it. If they say you get lashed, then you have to be able to show that the person hit you. Not that when they come out, the way the vehicles are, it reveals that it's you who hit the person. You follow?
Right. Yeah.
If the front of your vehicle is hit and the side of the person own is as well. But you say you get hit. That is wrong, is you hit the man. Although you could still be right. You understand what I'm saying? Depending on
Yeah.
where you hit him. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing with it is, the law says that you ought to report the accident, and failure to
Yeah.
report is a criminal offense.
It is a
But
criminal offense.
right.
But plenty people
But
don't follow that in this country.
exactly. And when you reach any station and the police tell you, all you prepare to settle, all you want us to get involved. Have you ever been in that position, or the police always it always gets to that point where you all don't want to settle and the police have to make a determination as to who wrong and who right?
Well, today, you know, they don't do that anymore for Farid. You know, they stopped doing that, right?
Well,
All they do now
exactly.
is they just take the facts of what transpired. You were heading west. This one was heading east. You cross, they draw the thing, so on, but they don't say who wrong or right. And that is the report. Because long ago that used to impact insurance companies, it is as though the police officer used to determine who insurance should pay.
Yeah.
So they protest that. So now police can't, and the insurance will tell you now, don't accept liability.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, they tell you that big on the policy. If something goes wrong, do not accept liability. Let them make that determination.
Okay, so wonderful. So what the public needs to bear in mind is that once you make the report that there was an accident, and you present your insurance and your certified copy, and you presented your driver's permit, then it ends there. You know, you're not obligated to discuss how this accident took place, because you may be implicating yourself. You may be wrong. You may have been, your phone ring and you drop your head to check, and you break a red light. You don't want to say that, because if it was on your phone, you don't want to admit you was on your phone. You don't want to say, well, you got a text and you was reading a text. So, not that I'm encouraging anybody to break the law, but I'm sure people could relate to the examples I'm using there. When you get to the station, the law makes clear provision that you ought to make a report, but you're not obligated to give a description of what took place, because the police will then warn you of intended prosecution depending on what you say. So if it is you say something and in relating the story, the narrative you give, the editorial you give, you're implicating yourself, or you're more or less admitting culpability or liability in some way. The police may be placed in a position based on your language and the things that you said to warn you. So I have to caution you that what you said there, it appears that you're wrong from your language, and you broke the law. You broke a light, you drove on the shoulder, you failed to signal. Based on what you're saying, I need to warn you that I'm warning you of intended prosecution. Based on what you said, I may have to charge you. So, but if it is if you don't give that information, if it is you just say I'm reporting the accident, it's up if the hot coals fall on the police lap now. They may have to go and do their own independent investigation, go and look at CCTV footage on the road. They may have to go and ask questions of civilians if they were wrong, or if anybody was there. So if there's a vendor close by, more than likely he might have been selling all morning. He might have seen something. He may have heard the collision. So it is the public's right not to give a written statement, or not to even relate the details of what took place, because they have a right to silence. They are sufficiently covered in merely coming to the station, reporting that something occurred, presenting the documents, and they covered in law. They will not be in contravention of 79(1) A, B, or C, or 79(2). They would simply have they would have fulfilled their obligation in law, and that is it. I remember once going to the station. I was representing someone. And the husband of a woman called me. He said, my wife was on the road last night. She was liming. Apparently she was involved in some sort of accident. He doesn't know the details, and he said, I just advised my wife not to go to the station. So, listening, he said, I believe, knowing my wife as I do, and knowing that she was out with her girlfriends, and the hour in the morning that took place, she may have had something. And if she go in the station and get charged, that's a next headache for me. So he advised her not to make the report. The next morning, I took her to the station. The police asked me what the position was, and I told them that she reported the accident as soon as she can. Her position was, based on what she explained to me, is that she was so sufficiently shaken, based on what she was saying, the details, that she felt more comfortable making the report at that time when she was calm and collective. So he said that the person made the report, the other party made the report last night. I said, well, her explanation from what she explained to me seemed to be reasonable. Richard, your volume. And
yeah.
And so I merely explained that, you know, my client was sufficiently shaken last night. She was making the report the next morning. She was sufficiently shaken that she didn't feel comfortable coming to the station. She was emotional, and from what she explained to me, she was incoherent. She wasn't too lucid. I couldn't get a proper story from her. We came to the station at her earliest convenience, and my earliest convenience, and now she's making the report. It's, in my view, a reasonable period, which is the next day. So he said that, that ain't what I hear. I said, well, officer, I mean, your investigation may reveal differently, but I could only work with the instructions I have. But when he asked her what happened, I said, officer, that's it, you know. These are her documents, the permit, the insurance certificate. If you need to see the certified copy, this is it also, but we have nothing further to say. He said, but she needs to tell me what happened. I said, she doesn't need to do that. She needs to make a report, and I believe she just did. Unless she's under arrest or I am under arrest. We are about to leave the station. And before I do that, I want to wish you a very good evening. So he said, no. I said, well, I have no problem. If there's a reason in law for keeping she and me here, I'm prepared to stay. But other than that, just let me know if our presence is needed, because I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the law says we need to report. This is the DP, this is the insurance. If you need to see the certified copy, I have that too. But that's about it. You just let me know if there's anything arising out of your investigation and that requires me to respond. So he said, listen, I don't want to talk to the lawyer. I want to talk to the woman involved in the accident. I said, well, I believe if you need to ask questions of I should be present, because I don't know if you may be asking her probing questions that may be geared towards, you know, extracting out of her things that she may not want to say, or she might later regret. So I don't think you can exclude me from this dialogue. So I said, once you're here to ask a question about the accident, I'm going to be present. So he said, you know what, look, mister, deal with the constable across there. So he was hearing, because the police was a little loud, and I was trying to be as quiet as possible and respectful before they exercise their discretionary powers and permit ourselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, from the time your volume exceeds theirs, you're disrespectful. So yeah. I try to keep it under their tone at all times. And I explained to the officer, I said, well, I don't think I need to repeat myself, because I saw you were listening. I'm just showing you the documents again. DP, certificate of insurance, everything good. Once you make a note there that we make the report, then I think you don't need to waste all your time on us anymore. You have more serious things to deal with at the station, I'm sure. But having said that, Richard, this is where we are. We don't need to overstate the point. I think we've educated the public. I am not encouraging the public to be disrespectful to the police. In no way would I ever do that. I am simply saying to respectfully let them know that you're aware of what the law is. So if you didn't know before today, you know now. You could quote the section 79(1) A, B, and C, or 79(2) of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, that you have an obligation to report. You don't have an obligation to give the details as to what happened. And you certainly
what some people do. What some people do as well, Fareed,
Yeah.
They will tell you, no, let us settle outside, forget that now. And if you, because we're educating our listeners,
Yeah.
if you agree to that, what they tend to do to you, you go on home thinking, all they have all the agreement, you're not going to report it. And all they
Yeah.
agree not to report it, you know, after you
Yeah.
don't do that, the next man go on and report it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened to me already too.
Wicked,
Yeah.
set you up,
I was
and they ain't settling anything.
no.
And if you stay for a week or so, well, now you're wrong
You're real
because
trouble.
they
Yeah.
reported it and you didn't.
That's right.
So to our listening public, do not take any guidance from anywhere, from anyone else, if they're not telling you what for reader sharing today.
That's right.
Go and report it, even if they just break your review mirror,
Mm-hmm.
right? Go and report it. It might take you a little time, but they will tell you, nah, that small thing, forget that, nah, man.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go home, they go on and say, this card, the number, hit me.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? And scrape up my car with the review mirror and and you may think that is it. 6 months from now, you're home sleeping, police come by and they love to come
Yeah.
between 2 and 4:30,
Yes.
Big set of noise and so on, they drag you out to charge you. You know what? They didn't report the accident. You
That's
can't believe that.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And
Yeah.
that they were looking for you all the time and they just right there.
Yeah.
Oh my dear me.
You got to be like a real criminal.
Yeah, you feel your neighbors would believe after it was a little accident where your mirror and another person's vehicle collided. That's what they came
Yeah.
for.
Hmm.
They said, nah, it had to be more than that. It had to be more than that. Police
When
will
it
come
hap-
so for that.
When it happened to me, with a doctor. Yeah. He said, I am Dr. So and so. And he showed me all kind of ID and thing. And we said, okay, we'll forget that and all kind of things. So I went away. Next thing, about a week after, the police came and said, you David McIntyre? Yes, sir. He was involved in an accident last week. So I said, yes, but the guy and I, we decided to just work it out that kind of way and forget it. So no, the guy made a report, I had to go to court, Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine.
And he's a doctor.
Yeah, and
He's
a
a
doctor.
doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. And nothing really happened, To say, well,
Yeah.
the defender was dented or anything like that, just a little bruise of the paint, The magistrate, asked asked the prosecutor to send an officer to see the damage. And the officer took a picture and brought it back to the magistrate. The magistrate, excuse me, doc, this is what you're trying to get this guy convicted of. He said, no. All I work out that. Paint your car or ask him to get somebody to paint the car. Forget that. And he just threw it out. Well, I got away because I know that would go against me when it comes to certificate of character.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try to play it very straight. Anything happens now, I am going to the police station.
Well, as a lawyer, I have to be. I mean, I have to do the correct thing as a civilian, but as a lawyer, I'm doubly careful too, because I could lose my license to practice as an attorney. If you have a criminal conviction, they could treat you as not being fit to practice law, that you're a man with a tarnished reputation.
You're right.
And so although I may have entered the profession without a tarnished rep, if I develop one along the way, they could withdraw my practicing certificate and tell me, well, now that you're convicted, man, we don't think that you're fit and proper to practice in the nation's courts and to be fulfilling any obligation as an attorney. So my career could come to a premature end because I don't want to report an accident. It depends on how it is viewed, and I will have to argue my case and so on. So I don't mix matters with that, David. I remember a UE student roll up on me, Richard. I'm making that turn through Monte Grand, getting into St. Augustine and straightening up to get onto the highway, and a UE student roll up on me. I recognized when I came out of the vehicle because I felt the press against my car. When I looked at it, it was nothing. A police officer was on duty close by because he was kind of directing traffic. When he saw what happened, he walked across. He told me, the choice is yours to make a report. In my mind, I'm saying, he ain't supposed to be saying the choice is mine. I had to make the report, but I think he was trying to be practical because the vehicle wasn't affected. It was just a press, a touch.
Right.
Nothing, no marks, no nothing. But I was so concerned that I went to the St. Joseph police station from St. Augustine, And I said to the officer there, I said, listen, something simple happened. I don't think it's an issue, but I need to make the report and I want a receipt because I don't want to have to be dealing with an unnecessary issue down the road if it presents itself. So at least I made a report.
Yeah. You're supposed to. Don't falter their
The dreadful thing about it is the public may not understand. You know, everybody, you know, when you go to the station and the police tell you, we don't need to make an entry. I don't know if you had ever had that experience, but I'm just saying, and all, the police cannot tell you, or they go outside and settle that. They cannot. They ought to make entries in the diary, and you ought to encourage them to make an entry of some kind and give you a receipt for the fact that to reflect that the accident was reported.
That's right.
Because you don't want any complications down the road for whatever reason. Because you know something, if it is, let us say that something comes of that, let us say for whatever reason they have to refer to the video footage of these vehicles colliding, and then you're accused of not making the report. If you go back to the station and you said, well, I remember the officer, I know this Richard Norrie was the officer. I know him from the community, and when I spoke to Richard Norrie, he told me, Officer Norrie tell me we could go outside and settle that. Officer Norrie ain't sure to agree to that. You know, he's not going to admit that was the advice he gave you.
No, you're not going to agree to that.
So you ought to cover your back. The factually, somebody might quicker want to believe that the police would have done the correct thing rather than the police telling about settle that outside.
That's right.
But these are the intricacies of the law. Last week we had talked a little bit about the theft, Richard. But I said
let me just add one thing before you go on now. Yeah. I want to say to people, I can only ask you all to do what I will do and what I have done. If my mirror touch your mirror in your car, it could be the smallest thing, and we agree to settle outside, I did not agree not to go to the police. So you and I could still do what we agreed to do, but when I leave there, I head into the police to say, hey, there was this very small collision, so, and get that out the way, and I would still call the person and settle. It's not my job to advise them to go to the police station. I don't want to be, I know people who were surprised, like what happened to Daddy Mac. That happened to my family member, and I will never forget that. They agreed, you know.
Yeah, that really stayed in my crease, and I said,
yeah.
Anything happen, could be just a little, I am going to report it. No matter what
we're
going to do.
I can honor my word.
Yeah.
And do what we say we're going to do outside, right? Yeah. But still going to the police, yeah.
That's right.
And if they come and ask you, but we agreed to settle thing outside, we reported for, I tell them I never told you I wasn't going to the police. I agree that we settle outside and we settling.
That's right.
But I had an obligation under the law to tell you.
Yeah. It's important that you do.
That decision, you know, that is automatic.
Yeah.
Another thing is this. Yeah.
To get it out to our listeners is something you have a choice over, you know. Accident, you need to know where's your police station for this community and head there.
Simple.
Yeah.
Another thing is the report. I mean, I think it's public information, but we could mention it also. If it is you have to make a report, you could make the report in any police station. So if for some reason you believe this is not a safe place, let us say it's a female driver and two females, and they realize it has some roughneck men linemen on the corner or close to the station, and they feel comfortable parking given the time, and they had to walk past these individuals, they can proceed to another station where it are no roughneck men, it are no characters standing in the road and lining there where they feel intimidated. The police can't say we're not taking the report. You could simply offer an explanation. Listen, where I was close to San Juan station on the hill there, men was arguing in front of the station. I wasn't going to try to walk through that crowd. Or I know that area to be an unsafe place. You know, some people have an aversion for the Dilly Street. They might say it happened close to Besson Street police station, but I not going Besson Street. Or parking is a problem by Besson Street. You know, if it is you have that experience, when it is you have to park to go to Besson Street police station, you have to drive, you have to make the left turn and get in by the Deliverance Temple and make the block and come back down because there's no entry from the main road itself. Is no entry to swing up the left hand side up. You can't go up Piccadilly, you have to come down. So you have to make the block and come down and perhaps park on the left or right. Some people may say, well, you know, I want to stop there for any number of reasons. Parking issues, the area. You can proceed to the next station if you go reach Barataria. So in other words, what I'm saying is the police cannot deny you making a report at a station that you're more comfortable with for any number of reasons. So you could simply have a plausible explanation for wanting to go to another station, or you could simply prefer to go to a station which is the station that in the area you're living in. They ought to take the report, and then their responsibility is to transfer the report that they took and the details, the information to the other station. So if the responsibilities for that station where the offense took place in, their responsibility is to investigate the offense. You could have made the report in another station in another district, and they will simply transfer the information, and the investigator will get in contact with you.
Yeah.
So you may not feel safe enough to go to Besson Street on Thursday. You make the report in Barataria police station. Barataria transfer the statement or the report you give to Besson Street, and an investigator assigned to the accident or the incident will contact you or may contact you, and then they take it from there. So the report not to be turned away. The police can't tell you, well, go. You're supposed to go in the district in which part it take place. I think it's now tried law. It is a practice, and it's in the station. Sometimes I see it in the stations where you could make a report anywhere.
Yeah.
And don't let any police.
That's a very good thing. No, I didn't know that you could make a report for accident anywhere, but I know now you can report any other matter anywhere. So that's good to know. It also extends to car accident. As I was under the mistaken but innocent belief that you could have you had to report a car accident in the area where the accident happened, the police station for that area. But I know they talk about you can make a report anyway. So only now I'm coming to know that it also extended to car accident as well. That'd be very helpful, especially to women.
Yeah, you can't, and sometimes it's for very practical reasons. Just like I think I gave a good reason there. You're uncomfortable. You made an observation, and you're uncomfortable making a report for reasons that exist at that point in time. You know, you're seeing it have a party there. It has some men liming in the road, or men just liming. Your profile, man, the way he dress, he ain't looking like somebody you want to walk past. He ain't look like a politician, well dressed and well mannered. So you profile the man and you decide you ain't gonna walk past. You prefer to walk past the man in the suit, not.
And he doesn't look like a person who might want to give you spiritual or religious guidance.
Oh boy.
Richard, I wanted to raise another small point. You know, very often, the police arrest somebody, and they arrest them, and the man get charged for possession of a deadly weapon. And when they read the charge in the court, you want to know what by this fella is a serious criminal. So when the magistrate asked him, what do you plead, guilty or not guilty? And he said, guilty with a cause. So that's a contemporary lay expression that persons on the street like to give. You can't be guilty with a cause. It's either you're guilty or you're not guilty. You can't be guilty with a cause, meaning you're guilty, but you have a plausible explanation. There is no excuse if you break the law. But in mitigation, you could explain that, you know, you broke the law, you contravened the provision of the legislation, but in mitigation, it happened under special circumstances, and then you plea a case and ask the court to deal with you leniently. But when you say the charge is possession of a deadly weapon and you want to say guilty with a cause, they say, well, no, we can't accept guilty with a cause. you need to say unequivocal. You have to have an unequivocal position, and that position, that big word simply means to say it's either you're one or the other. You can't be sitting on the fence. So sometimes when you're getting to the facts now, you realize that the man had a knife in his hand. The knife he was cutting an orange or he was cutting a fruit. He sat up on the pavement, cutting something, cutting an orange, and the police passed, and his explanation is, I had an orange in my hand, I now don't eat the orange. The police stopped and answered the question. I didn't like the way they talked to me. So these things escalate, and before you know, I'm in the back of the jeep going down in the station, they're charging me for possession of a deadly weapon. And he explains that I had a knife in my hand, but having the knife in your hand in itself doesn't make it a deadly weapon. What makes it a deadly weapon is when it is you have it with a certain intention. So if you had it in your hand and you was cutting up apple on the street, there's no law that says you can't slice up apple on the street. You can have what if you're standing in front of in the outside of your front gate of your house, you're on the government road, you're on the pavement, as we say, the government road, you're on the pavement. The police pull up on you and say, where do you that knife in your hand? And you explain, officer, I now done peel orange, I now done eat the orange, look at it in the bin there. And you know, maybe he's a fellow who don't know how to conduct himself properly. He talked to the police in a kind of way, as we say, in a disrespectful way. Things get out of hand. He could have handled it better and he didn't. And they gave him a charge for possession of a deadly weapon. There is what we call in law probable cause and a reasonable grounds for acting in a certain way. So probable cause is when factually the police made observations, and the observations they made caused them reasonably to stop and ask questions, ask probing questions. So let us say they see a man with a knife in his hands, sitting up on the pavement, and passers-by have to convey themselves before him. They stop and ask him, sir, is there any particular reason why it is that knife in your hand? Why don't you put it away? And they try to ascertain from his demeanor and the way he's conducting himself and the answers he gives, whether he's up to no good, because having the knife in his hand in itself may not be the offense. Is having it, being in possession of a deadly weapon. It's a knife. It only becomes deadly when there is a factual matrix, or when there are facts surrounding that possession that causes you to form the opinion that he wants to use it for a nefarious and unlawful purpose. So it's the unlawful purpose that makes the knife a deadly weapon. The knife in itself is not deadly. The knife could be in your possession for a lawful reason. So when the public is interacting with the police, and the police asks questions as in, why are you in possession of that? What's your purpose? You ought to conduct yourself in a proper way, in a manner that conveys in very concise language. Don't try to talk too much. That, you know, officer, this is a knife, a pen knife, a small knife. I haven't even noticed is a knife to cut orange. I was now eating some orange, and if you could show them, I have 2 orange on the wall, I'm about to cut it, or I have something on me. The explanation helps. It's like the example I gave we was chatting before, and I told you a man get charged in the court for exposing himself in the public. Summary offense. When it is the facts were read in the court, he was peeing on a lamppost. He offered the police an explanation, and the police didn't like the way he talked to him. He tell the police, but what look like I doing? I peeing. And that dialogue between officer and him went in many different directions, and before I know, he charged
What is breaking up?
exposing himself in public, but the factual matrix, the facts surrounding the so-called exposure was the man had unzipped himself in order to pee on a lamppost in the Tuna market. Heard what happened, and the
Your audio is breaking up. Something about your audio is breaking up now.
But the man said I was about 100 feet away in the car park because I couldn't hold it in anymore. So I asked myself, so I went to the furthest point I got, didn't satisfy him, and he came in the public. I was urinating. Good song, you know. David, is it any better? I'm
Sounds better
hoping it
now.
is. Richard, are you hearing me? David, has it improved?
Yes, very much.
Yes, I mean, you were sticking before.
Right. So I was saying sometimes probable cause has to do in law. There's what you call probable cause. Probable cause is the facts surrounding what has happened. The police in stopping you in the road must have probable cause. They can't just randomly profile you because they see a bald head man or a Rasta man in the road and they decide, you know what, we got to stop the Rasta. You know, that Rasta could be up to no good. They can't profile a human being. If it is a roadblock and you see two Rasta in the vehicle, you can't say, well, we're going to get them a rub down. They must have marijuana on them. That is profiling. You must have a reasonable basis in law based on facts that you observe. So if it is you observe the same way I said to you that the man had a knife in his hand and you had to ask questions. If it is you're in a position where a truck is passing, if you hear some strange music in my background, yeah, I can't help that. Is that music truck? Is that music truck? I mean, this is Trinidad. Yeah, I think they passed now. So when the probable cause must always be hinged to something that an observation the police made, and the observation must be something very practical where they made observations, they would have seen something that causes them to form an opinion that you may be up to no good. David, have you ever seen or heard where a man he may be in a position where he's walking coming down the road and a police vehicle is coming in the opposite direction, he turns and he starts running because his dirty mind is that, you know, boy, I have something illegal, the police car coming in that direction if they notice. So he turns and as we say, he run or he digs off. The police now form an opinion based on the fact that when the man made eye contact with them, he turned and he ran away. So they pursued him and then they gave him a body search. They search his person and then they may find something illegal. Or sometimes you hear while he was running, he threw something. And they stopped and they conduct a search and find ammunition, marijuana, a L-shaped object resembling that of a firearm. At least they would have, that is probable cause. Based on the reaction of the person when they made contact with the police in terms of eye contact, or when they saw the police vehicle, they ran. So it causes the police, based on the action, to form the opinion that something is not right here. And then they embark on an investigative procedure. So they have, in other words, what it ties to is there's a reasonable basis based on their observation of the individual to stop him and ask questions. So it's never profiling. It can't be that we stop him because he's a Rasta, or we stop him because he menacing looking, or you know, because if it is you were to do that, then the vast majority of the civilians out there who dress very casually could come across as, you know, people who, for whatever reason, they're not easy on the eye. So you can't treat the man in the suit or the man in the shirt and tie. He can all could be stopped because you have probable cause to believe you're up to no good. Sometimes, David, you ever hear somebody traveling, they say you must always dress properly when you're traveling?
Yeah. Well, I grew up hearing that.
Yes. You don't want to land in JFK in a three-quarter pants and your underwear showing with a vest on.
A vest.
Or a t-shirt and
slipper.
And a slipper, because when immigration see you, they say, nah boy, he can't be for real. So they often tell you wear a proper shirt and a dress pants and a proper shoes. and conduct yourself in a particular way, because immigration has been making observations and they could find a reason to stop you. They could profile you
Of
and say,
course.
you know what, let me ask him some questions. Well, I could tell you about that because I have found myself dressed properly but still profiled. I remember being in Heathrow Airport and a knapsack on the back and in t-shirt and jeans and sneakers. In my view, I dressed properly, and they pulled me over and asked me questions. And when I responded and I said, my name is Farid Ali, well, they took me to a room. So it happens anywhere you go. So the public out there, Richard, the public need to be easy on the police. In the
Yeah.
context of sometimes a reasonable, plausible, calm explanation could cause the situation to not escalate into anything that you don't want it to end up in. Or,
Exactly.
in other words, you may be very well like the man who was peeing on the lamppost. A simple explanation, officer, I really couldn't hold it in again. And I was doing what was the quickest possible thing in the moment. I'm sorry. And I want to know better. And you leave it at that. You don't have to react on it. Because the discretionary powers of the police are so much that they just have to subjectively make an observation. And in their view, the way the person, individual conducted it. See, Richard, it's subjective in the sense that Officer A and Officer B may have made the observation at the Independence Square and see you passing there, and they didn't make a big issue of the way you look. But you're telling the officer at the top of Frederick Street, but I now pass two police there and then tell me nothing. Like you are nothing to do. And then and the whole color of the equation change. The way you conduct yourself with the officers. So I'm not saying that in every instance the police is on the button and on all four squares, and the reason for forming the opinion was solid and sound. But the discretion of the police the discretion of each officer is so wide in terms of there is an element of subjectivity. Subjectivity meaning his opinion of you in the way that you convey yourself, you conduct yourself, the way you look. That he may find that in itself is enough to ask a question of you. So one way to diffuse that is to be calm. You know you're not going in the sun, and you answer in very discreet language, very short, simple language that, you know, this is the position, officer. I leave home in a hurry. I didn't have my best rubber slippers on. And I walk with the one by the door. And I in a vest because it's hot today. So don't profile me. I'm out here for a lawful purpose. I go and drop groceries to my grandmother. And it done there, Richard. But when the public react, then things escalate, and then you say the police bad. So you know, these things help. So if you're listening out there, remember what it is: probable cause and reasonable grounds. So you're free to tell the police, well, officer, I don't believe you have any probable cause to stop me. But barring all of that, I have a plausible explanation. So whatever you observe, when I turned and ran when I saw the vehicle, you perceived that I saw you and ran. But I saw my grandmother walking, coming up from behind you, and she wanted to know what I on the road for, so I was running, heading straight back home. Oh, that song, David.
Nice. Real old school.
Rigmarole.
Yeah.
Yeah. They see you on the road and you know you're in the wrong place. So you head straight back where you're supposed to be. Another small one that the public could go with, Richard. When a police comes to execute a warrant at your house, right? Let us say they come and they say they have a warrant for your arrest, or the warrant is in the name of Farid Ali. Whoever answers at the door, they're entitled to ask to see the warrant. They ought to show you the warrant or they ought to read it to you. So sometimes what the officer does is he would read the warrant out. The warrant's supposed to contain the name of the person involved. So if it's Farid Ali, it will convey the address that they're coming to, so the address of the home. And it ought to indicate the reasonable grounds to suspect that there may be something illegal on the compound, and it ought to state what the items are that you're coming to look for. So you can't just say we have reasonable grounds to suspect it are illegal things happening here. or there are illegal items on the compound, they ought to state on the warrant what is the reasonable grounds to suspect and what are the items. So if they say guns and ammunition, that in itself justifies the document. It would justify itself. It would say, well, they had reasonable grounds to believe that there's guns and ammunition on the compound, and therefore we have this warrant which enables us to search the property. Once they show you that, and you ought to look for certain things: the name, the address, the reasonable basis for the search, and then it ought to be signed and stamped by a justice of the peace, and it reflects that it's a legitimate document. If it is the document just has Frederick Street, Port of Spain, the police may not know the number of the house, because a lot of houses don't have numbers in front of it. So they could simply have on the corner of Duke and Richmond Street, Port of Spain, and the name Farid Ali. So in looking at warrants, or in executing warrants, the warrant must have the name of the individual, the address, it must have a justice of the peace signature and stamp, and it must have the reason and what is the reason for conducting the search. Otherwise, it may be maliciously, or it could be treated as maliciously gotten. In other words, before you could get that warrant, before the police could have that warrant in his hand to come and execute at your home, he has to go and swear on oath before a justice of the peace that I've had the home of Farid Ali under observation, or the home of David McIntyre under observation for some time based on information. And the information is that they may have something illegal there. And then based on the information I received, I had the house under observation and Mr. Nore, Mr. McIntyre, Mr. Farid Ali under observation. And I formed the opinion based on the information I received that there is illegal activity taking place there. And then state what were the observations, and the justice of the peace, if it is satisfied that there's a reasonable basis now. Not the explanation can be, well, boy, I talk in tongue, and tongue say that he involved in them kind of thing. That's not enough. The police must act on the information received, made observations of their own, and then based on the observation, they choose to go now and swear on information before justice of the peace, seeking a warrant. And if it is the justice of the peace is of the view that there's a reasonable basis, that he's satisfied that investigative material reflected that you and your observation as an officer had a basis in law based on facts that you investigated to go to the man's house, then they allow you the warrant. Otherwise, they tell you we can't endorse any warrant or take this to the level of a warrant. So the very fact that the police turns up at your doorstep means that he didn't act on his own whim and fancy. He had to get that document from a justice of the peace. And that document would have gone through a vetting process. Well, that exercise would have gone through a vetting process before the document is produced by the justice of the peace in the name of the individual, Farid Ali, Richard Norrie, David McIntyre. And then the reasons for the document being produced has to be stated on the warrant. So when they tell your spouse or your son or anybody that we have a warrant, it means that the warrant has been tested. There's a basis. The basis for the warrant has been tested, and the document is a legal document that empowers me to act in a certain way to search. If it hasn't gone through that process, so if the police come and they just wave a document and say we have a warrant, and they ought to show you, and they ought to read it to you or allow you to read it if you can't read. Sometimes you hear a person say, "Oh, let's say warrant," and they come in and they kick down your door, and no, it's not like that. And another thing is, the police cannot break your door and enter without first giving you the opportunity to allow them right of passage. So you could save the front door being unhinged, or save your glass door from being broken by simply complying. So one way to get you to comply is to do the reasonable thing. The police presents the warrant, he satisfies you, madam, you're seeing your name here, you're seeing the address, you're seeing the reason for conducting the search. This is a legitimate document stamped by a justice of the peace, signed and endorsed. It satisfies the requirement of a warrant. And this is a legal document that allows us to enter and search. Now, when they're searching Richard, the police can enter and they scatter all over the house, and they leave you in the gallery with a constable and sergeant and inspector and other constables and SRP combing the whole house, checking inside the fridge, under the bed, the cupboard space, and then they come out and say, we have here, we find a cache of drugs, 16 rounds of ammunition, and AR-15, and you say, but that was never there, or they planted. It's not supposed to be like that. The warrant order be executed, and in a very sequential manner, you're supposed to accompany the police on exercise. So they take you room to room, and they say, we're conducting the search in your presence. So you will be able to see and observe that whatever we found it in your presence. You can't raise an allegation and say, no, this was never here. All you're doing, all you're abusing all your powers, all you're setting me up. It wouldn't be like that. Now, there is a process called backing the warrant. Richard and David, there's a process called backing the warrant where the same warrant that they showed you, the document, they go on the back of the warrant now and they make an endorsement. They say, sir, we want to make an endorsement here in your presence on the back of this document, the warrant, and they will reflect the exercise that took place, that we came into the house, the 3-bedroom flat house. In the first bedroom, that is an 8-room, 11 by 15 in our estimation, in the Chester drawer against the wall, in searching the Chester drawer, in the third drawer with underwears, between 2 jockey shorts and a handkerchief, I found ammunition. And they make the note on the back of the warrant that this is what happened, and they're letting you know. At that point, when they say, sir, you see what we found here, we have the belief that these metallic-looking objects resemble that of ammunition. And we're making an endorsement here, and he said, boss, I'm sorry. In other words, that response, boss, I'm sorry, or whatever response the individual gives, let us say it's of a confessionary nature, right? You ought to make the note on the back of the warrant there that he asks, ease me up now, I'm sorry. Or I have that gun there for my own protection. You ought to make the entry there, and then at that point when you make the entry, you invite the person to endorse his signature against the note you make. That is called backing the warrant. And when they sign, they can't say, in that moment that they sign, they cannot turn around now and say, well, you know, I get set up, because the entry was made in the presence of the individual, the people in the house. We found it in their presence, and having found it in their presence, we made the necessary endorsement in their presence. And then the officer who conducts that exercise, he puts his signature under the civilian signature. So to show that he witnessed when the civilian signed and admitted. And then the most senior officer there, Richard and David, the most senior officer, he signs also. So he's endorsing the fact that he witnessed not only the civilian sign, but a junior officer signed, and he being the most senior person on the exercise, he endorses it also. So in other words, by the time you get to court, the police have a strong case against you. They have a warrant, and they have a warrant that is endorsed accordingly. You following, David?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So it is important with warrants. It's important when it is police officers turn up at your door with a warrant that you assist them in assisting you. You can insist that the search be conducted in your presence. In no way are you frustrating the exercise. You just like to be there, so everything could take place above board. And the police ought to be thankful for that too. So you can't accuse them of doing the wrong thing. You can't accuse them of setting you up and putting you in place and getting you a bad case. They ought to conduct the search in your presence.
That's right.
Richard, you follow me? You know, there's another small issue here raised all the time. Have you ever heard that a man has to go, he want to access his bail, or he's locked up at the police station and they have to get a JP present at the station, and they want to give him station bail. They want to release him from the station, so they take him into custody. He spent 2 days in the station. A charge was laid. The police want to release him in his own recognizance, as they say. game own bail at the station and allow him to leave, and he will have an obligation to attend court on Monday. Have you ever heard things like that happening, David, in your experience?
Yeah, I've heard instances like that. Yeah.
Right. Another thing is, that is one instance. When bail is granted at the magistrate's court, the individual may not have the documentation, the deed. Let us say you ought to produce a deed as collateral. He may not have that deed on his person, or his family may not have it, because remember, bail is granted at the court. But now that you know bail has been granted and they say property to be approved by the clerk of the peace, or they say surety bail using property. The difference is when it's clerk of the peace approval, you ought to produce the deed for your property. Let us say it's number 1 Roadbrook Place, or it's Gulfview, or it's Valsay, right? Or it's Greenvale in Arima. What you ought to do is produce your deed and produce a WASA clearance certificate showing that your water rate's paid up to date. Or TNTEC, your latest TNTEC bill to show that your utilities for TNTEC has been paid up to date, and your land and building taxes receipt to show that your property tax is paid up to December 2009 it would be. And when you produce those documents, what the court does, the clerk of the peace will now call the various courts in Trinidad and Tobago, all the magistrates courts, and they will do a search on the history of the property. If the property is used for bail for Richard Norrie in San Fernando, and you want to use the deed now, you want to use the property, the endorsement of the property to take bail for a man in Sandy Grande Court, they will say, no, sir, we can't use this. Our search has revealed that this property is being used already.
Yeah.
In a bail, for bail, as collateral for bail for a man in the magistrate court, and the records are reflecting that this property has been encumbered. This property is currently in use. About 3 years now, that matter is still before the court. It hasn't been released based on the information we have here. So they deny, they say you can't use that property. That is what you call clerk of the peace approval. The clerk of the peace vets the document and he checks the 9 courts in Trinidad and Tobago and the 3 high courts, the one in San Fernando, the one in Port of Spain, and the one in Tobago. They realize it's clear. It's a clean deed, as we say, meaning the expression is clean deed, meaning that it's not encumbered in any way. And then you can use it. But sometimes the defense attorneys say that my client isn't blessed with any estate in fee simple. That's nice legal language to say that he owns no property, he's a pauper. So you say in the court, Mr. Norrie isn't blessed with any estate in fee simple. In other words, nice language to say Mr. Norrie owns no house. And if it is you with a grand bail using property to be endorsed, being the poor man that he is, he would be in a difficulty where he will never be able to access bail. It could also mean that the property is Mr. Norrie's own, but Mr. Norrie ain't finished pay the mortgage. The mortgage is a 30-year mortgage and he paid 29 years of the mortgage. He had 1 more year of mortgage to pay. And he therefore can't use it. It's not his own. The bank owns it still.
That's right.
Until he pay off it. So that property can't be used. And they say, well, having searched, the property is encumbered. And therefore, this doesn't meet the requirements to be used in such a case because the bank has a line on the property. So I'm saying all that to say this, Richard. When the lawyer asks that the clerk of the peace approval not be placed against the bail, meaning that you simply use property that is as surety, you're using the property without the clerk of the peace approval, it gives a certain relief to the individual, meaning any deed could be used. The deed doesn't go through the same vetting process where you need to show land and building taxes paid, public utilities paid in terms of the water and the TNTEC bills. It's a simple thing where you produce the deed. Once they're satisfied that this is the deed that belongs to Richard Norrie, you produce a national ID card or a driver's permit and you could tie it back to Norrie. And you satisfied yourself that when we took all reasonable steps to ascertain whether this property belongs to him, he has produced enough documentation to satisfy us. Then we could use the property without doing the searches on it, without checking the history and whether it was used elsewhere. I'm saying that to say this. The vetting process for that isn't necessarily done in the magistrate's court by the clerk of the peace or now, as they say, the registrar of the magistrate's court or the registrar of the Supreme Court. It is done by a justice of the peace at the jail. Now, I don't want to get controversial here, but I will say it anyhow because factually, I think the public ought to know. Those justice of the peace or justices of the peace that operate at the nation's prisons, or sometimes when you go to the station, the police call and say, we have a justice of the peace, and I wouldn't call names. They recommend the justice of the peace. The justice of the peace sees you now and he comes to the station in a rush, or the justice of the peace who operates at the jail. He's right there unpointed. He's sitting there waiting at the nation's prison, and he's ready to process your documents. He says to you, well, there's a processing fee attached of $1,000 or $1,500, or they tell you a processing fee of $2,500. That is illegal. You ought not to pay a single cent to a justice of the peace because they are persons who are very often retired individuals who would have served the community well, who would have civil servants who are retired, who would have gone through a process to be, as we say, endorsed as a JP, sworn to uphold the laws of the land, and they ought to abide by the law. They pay a stipend by the state. That is not a full-time job. Sometimes you're justice of the peace, and from time to time you're called to the station to witness an interview. Richard Norrie may come to the station arrested, and they want to take a statement from him, but he said he had no friend or no family. So they say, well, we could provide a justice of the peace, and they put the justice, if you consent, we'll have the justice of the peace sit through the interview process. He's there to observe that fairness prevails. So they can't charge you. The justice of the peace can't charge you, or ought not to charge you, and the public shouldn't be paying any justice of the peace, any processing fee. They like to use cultured language. It's a processing fee. It's not I'm not charging you for my services. It's a processing fee. Do not engage in that, because what you're doing is you're complicit in the commission of a criminal offense. They ought not to be charging, and when it is you facilitate the transaction out of expediency because you want your son or your daughter or your husband or your friend out, and we had to pay $1,000 processing fee for him to complete the documents and have it stamped up and released. Very often you hear the justice of the peace saying, I don't give you receipts, sir. There's no receipt. This is they simply tell you, I don't have a receipt book and I'm not producing a receipt. So you either accept it on his terms, you pay the processing fee, no receipt. He pockets whatever, I would imagine, and then he completes your documents and you're released, your relative is released, your friend is released, and it done it. Over the years, that has been a practice that seems to, I don't think the police, I don't want to say the police ain't ready to deal with them, but for whatever reason, they seem to slip through the fingers of the law, or the hand of the law hasn't extended itself fully upon those individuals. So hopefully one day there'll be a sting operation. The police may be well aware of what is happening. But I will say this also, and I'm saying it to the benefit of the public. I could be held to task for what I'm saying. If it is you're at station and a JP is recommended, that recommendation, once you're satisfied with the recommendation, you have to form your view that you're comfortable with the JP that they provided you, they suggested. At no point in time should that JP charge you $1. Absolutely nothing. It's a service that individual is being paid a stipend by the state. And you could make a report at the station as to you've been approached and you've been encouraged to facilitate this transaction by servicing the individual with something, and you're uncomfortable with this, and you would ask the police if that is legal. And the police ought to tell you what I tell you, that no, sir, once he's a lawful justice of the peace, and you ought to see his credentials, he ought to have documents to reflect who he is. So a man can't be a pretender at station. And these are the little things that we ought to know. So when the police is providing you with a JP and they suggest they ought to witness the communication they're having. Don't walk away and leave the individual in a position where he's being caused to negotiate. Because sometimes you put things in place, you bring two people together, you introduce two people like a blind date. You introduce them and you walk away and say, well, what happens on the date now is you all will iron that detail out between yourself. You can't do that. You could simply, ask the police, he's asking me to pay some money here for his service. Is this lawful? And you can refuse. The dreadful thing about it, Richard and David, is sometimes when you refuse, or if you're in that position, you may not find, the JP may be well aware, he knows that you're correct and you know the law, but he may not be willing to complete the transaction. You need to make a report about that also. He can't refuse you. He can't say that he's not going to do his lawful function for whatever reason. He can't make an excuse in that moment.
Yeah.
Very often these things happen. Another thing is when it is you have to use property as for bail, you ought not, the property needs to be evaluated from time to time. So like when the magistrate say the bail I'm setting is based on the serious charge of possession of 27 kilograms of marijuana or a half pound of marijuana, I'm setting bail at property carrying the value of $250,000. You're very often asked to get a valuation done of the property that you wish to use, and when it is you go to do the valuation, now you realize that the deed still on my grandmother's name, you know. So, and my grandmother has been dead since 1985. We just never transferred the property. So she lawfully, well, I shouldn't say lawfully, she's now dead. The law doesn't recognize her as being someone of good standing because she is in another place. She has taken residence elsewhere, heaven or hell, or purgatory. And therefore, you ought to have done the necessary work to transfer the property lawfully into your name or whoever is the next of kin. And until it's lawfully transferred, you cannot produce that deed at the magistrate's court or the high court in the name of somebody else. The individual who is taking the bail, meaning the deceased grandmother, she ought to turn up at the court and indicate, listen, I am the owner of this property, these are my documents. And then she go through the vetting process with the registrar of the high court or the registrar of the magistrate's court in the district. And then they're satisfied that the person who stands before them is the person who owns the property. If they say they recognize that this person has been deceased for some years, they say, so sorry, we can't use this. You need to file letters of administration, have the will probated that you've been sitting on for so long, have the property transferred to the lawful individual, the beneficiary, and then have that individual now come and say they want to take bail. You know, that process sometimes may take some years, and then the lawyer isn't charging small money. But what I'm saying is this, in addition to determining whether the person who wants to take the bail's name is on the document, you must have sometimes a valuation done, an evaluation by an accredited valuator. So that is the important point I'm making. Sometimes you see a valuation done by Sam Phillip, and you wonder, but who's Sam Phillip? They say, well, he's a valuator. He is a man who does put valuations on property, and he just do them thing. He needs to be an accredited individual. So when you hear big names like Raymond and Pierre and Farrell and Company and Brent Augustus, and these are reputable valuation firms, companies, and so on. They have a track record in the business. So when it is the court sees that you have a name such as this, having done an evaluation, these are easy off the eyes. You recognize that these reputable firms, that is the nature of the job. But when you hear Sam Phillip, never heard that name before, eyebrows are raised. Sometimes you have individuals who come and say the property, the bail that was set was $250,000. They produce a deed, an evaluation that was done by a reputable firm, and it says that the property is worth $150,000. But it then carrying the $250,000 valuation that the court set. They turn up 3 days after with a valuation done by Sam Phillip that says the property that was $150 endorsed by an accredited firm 2 days ago is now $250 endorsed by Sam Phillip. And the court will say, no. He is not listed as an accredited valuator. So when you're having your property evaluated, you might get it cheap by Sam Phillip and breaking the cost, as we say in Trinity language, of going to an accredited individual who will charge you maybe $5,000. But Sam Phillip not taking you $2,000 and giving you a valuation that can't stand up anywhere. So in spending your money to have things valuated, try to and find out from the valuator whether he's accredited. He's supposed to tell you, and a man will be happy to say, I'm accredited, and produce documents to reflect same, because it shows that, you know, he an ordinary fellow on the street, that this business has a track record. And we are recognized by banks and state institutions as an accredited force, an accredited institution. And therefore, when we put our signature on our stamp on a document, you could take that to the bank and it stands up. It stands up to credibility, and no questions could be asked, or it's unlikely that it could be asked. So,
you're not touching on the election. Yeah. Great information. I like it, but I know we heading into the last 7 or 8 minutes. You're not touching on the elections at all in the People's National Movement.
Richard, you wouldn't believe how I've skillfully avoided that, because
you know, all listeners saying, wait now, we like all this legal talk, it would help us, good guidance, but I want to hear about elections too.
Richard, I'll put my neck on the line, right? I only have a few minutes, so if I have to stand up to any rebuke from you and David, I will survive it. I will survive 10 minutes. I am a firm supporter of Dr. Rowley. And I would like to say that I'm very confident that he's going to maintain his position. That the challenges of Dr. Rowley.
Farid, I'm feeling like I should have asked you this at 5:59 and 58 seconds. I think we made a big mistake, you know.
Based on what I've been hearing on the ground, especially between Saturday and today, it will take a miracle for him to win. Or if, like Richard says, between the days of voting, the boxing they ran, I will get legs and come back heavier.
My brothers, I am not of the view that Dr. Rowley has, in his actions through the 7 years that he has been where he is, he has sufficiently discredited himself with the electorate, with the membership of the PNM, that he will be displaced. My position is a personal opinion. I am not in any way affronting his challengers. I respect them. I have a lot of respect, particularly for Mrs. Nunes Teixeira. She is very senior to me in the profession. I hope to one day be as eloquent and as and well respected as she is. But I think that this situation is of such where when you look at the insensitivity that has been assigned to Dr. Rowley, there's a consistency in the way he has spoken through the years. He has not been behaving in this manner today or yesterday. He was once referred to as the Rottweiler, and it was such a nice thing to reflect on the fact that, you know, this is a man to be feared, a man to be reckoned with over 40 years in the parliament. And people used to like that kind of behavior. He has not in any way been discredited in terms of corruption or discredited in terms of the way he conducts himself in office. Yes, he may say things in a crass way. Maybe his vocabulary is sufficiently limited that he isn't as eloquent as some of the people challenging him. Or maybe, you know, he doesn't know how easy. I think he's easily triggered off, you know, the media when they start asking.
Farid, do you think if he was doing such a fantastic job, he'd have been challenged?
I believe that there are persons who believe that he could conduct himself in a different manner, and I don't believe that they could question the measures that this particular incumbent government has taken in order to correct our economic deficiencies. The subsidies that have been removed and have been reduced on the level that it has can't be challenged. It can't stand the scrutiny of its detractors. Yes, all of it may have been done too suddenly, 4 changes, 5 changes in a very short stint, but if it was done over the period of 7 years, it would have been more acceptable. It would have gone down, and it would have rolled off the tongue of the civilian population better. But mine, you know, the NACTA polls are saying that if it is there's a general election call in the morning, the PNM will win. That could only be accredited to the wonderful job that Dr. Rowley has been doing. He has always said to the poor, you need to upskill. He has said to the people in East Port of Spain that you need to get out of squalor, that opportunities are being provided by the state. Yes, he hasn't provided the mechanism and the machinery in which that they ought that they could easily access in order to get themselves out of squalor. The social programs there have been cutbacks against that. So and when you tell them upskill, or you could be saying upskill, but yet still you haven't been providing the institutional and educational machinery for them to empower themselves in order to improve their positions. But he can justify that by his cutting expenses, and the state has to band its belly. He did say on the election, when they won the election in 2020, and that August night, he said the next 2 years are going to be tough. I don't know if you all remember that, but he said, I remember his first words when the UNC conceded and it was plain that the PNM had won 21-19. He indicated the next 2 years are going to be tough. I am not of the view that his challengers have sufficient basis in order to justify challenging him onto the level where they want to lead the party. If it is you're saying that he's an old man, no disrespect, but his challengers are equally old. They're in the same stratosphere in terms of age. Yes, they may be easier to deal with in terms of their personalities of such where you can accept what they say, because they say things with splendor, and they say it in such a nice, colorful way that you can accept. But no one is going to reverse that subsidy if they assume leadership of the party, and if it is they take the PNM into a third consecutive term. Those measures, those measures that are Procrustean or harsh or rigid or maybe seem to the public hasn't rioted yet, Richard and David. People hasn't taken to the street and complained. They might grumble, but they grumble and they keep walking.
Yeah, because they're
Fareed, I want to tell you,
victimization and all of that.
yeah, I could say I'm most shocked, but I'm listening because you're the first person out of hundreds whom I've spoken to have something to say the likes of which you have expressed.
Yeah.
I want to tell you, Fareed, in the couple minutes we have again, the economy today is far worse than it was in 2015. Far worse, right? We didn't have a windfall of money in 2015. We had that now for about a year.
Yeah.
And before the year, oil went back up to $75 a barrel by the ending of 2016, early 2017. And from then, all the way up to 2000, oil was in the 70s. So we were where we always consider ourselves to be just on that boom. Our problem might have been the amount of barrels we are capable of producing a day. But we had gone back to a place that we had drifted from since around 2012. And you want to tell me from 2015 to now, with all our revenue we have made, this is the only prime minister who is sitting, who has led a country, Trinidad and Tobago, with virtually two budgets away from $500 billion. And the country is in such a state, people living in squalor. You understand? I mean, come on, for 5:59. Before I say the wrong thing today, thanks to the time for saving me. Fareed, give the last word.
Yeah. Fareed, I don't think you know what's happening on the ground. I want to say that boldly. I don't think you understand what's happening on the ground. Now, he did say something also. He's going to do whatever he could to make rich richer. The only thing he didn't say is that he's going to make the poor poorer. That's all I can say.
But what I could
When
quote
he
and say,
achieved that, the rich has become extremely, extremely wealthy.
Yeah.
I mean, they are what you call super rich people now, between 2020 and now.
Yes.
Since that statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Okay, fellas, let's look at the time. Yes, time is important now.
But the rich has also gotten significantly poorer.
Mhm.
yeah,
Poor has become straight ahead. Very till next week.
Okay.
Mark.
same here. Blessings. We will talk more about this next week because the plot will thicken
Yeah,
as
we
time
will
goes.
start with that. It's
Yes.
better we start with that for a time
Yeah.
to respond. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Yes. Be safe. Yeah. Straight ahead, we got news at 6. Sparkler Macintosh is in studio. Stick and stay.
The future of talk is here.